This incident took place when I was 17. I was with my family. We were going through the mountains near Window Rock, Arizona. It was late at night, and all around us as we drove was darkness and tall trees. We were in a pickup truck. I was sitting in the front with my sister and her husband, who was driving. My 2 brothers and cousin were sitting back in the bed. All of a sudden, this thing or creature runs out in front of us and across the headlights. At the moment, I thought it was a deer. My brother-in-law, Eddie, said it was a coyote. It happened so fast, but just in case, we do say a prayer. After a few minutes, we soon forgot about it, driving along and talking. When up in front of us, there, just standing in the middle of the county road, are 4 more coyotes. Now, I've seen a lot of coyotes out where we live, but rarely do we see them more than 2 at a time, and even less sitting in the road. Eddie slows the truck, but they stay right there almost as if they're daring him. Then, when it looks like he's going to have to stop or hit them, they walk away towards the shoulder and disappear into the trees. Eddie then makes a remark that something spooky is going on, and he wants to get home as soon as possible. But my sister tells him better safe than sorry, and not to go too fast. Now, the only thing worse to us Navajos than coyotes appearing out of nowhere is the hoot of the owl. While most of the time it's no big deal, just odd-looking birds hunting for mice. When you hear them the way we did, something's not right. It could mean that someone close to you is in danger. The fact is, if they are hunting, they are most likely quiet. Anyways, we start hearing these owl hoots, one after the other, as if they are calling ahead, alerting some dark entity that we are on our way. More curious than that, there were 6 of us in that truck, and I know I counted 6 hoots. The turnoff from the county road is a dirt road, and it is less than 10 minutes from our house. Eddie is driving along, going a little faster than my sister is comfortable with. Looking back over my shoulder, I can see the rest of them there in the bed, bouncing and sliding around a little bit. Only a minute or 2 down the road, we can see the lights from the houses, still in the distance, but close enough where we're all feeling better about things. But before we get there, Eddie slams on the brakes and yanks the truck to the left. I see something big and black and definitely upright right in front of us. Despite Eddie's efforts, the truck runs right into it. We hit it so hard that it sounded like a gun going off. I was holding on tight to the door and seat, but I could hear the rest of my family being thrown around in the back. They were screaming and cursing. Eddie then managed to get control of the vehicle pretty fast. When it stopped, I jumped out to make sure my 2 brothers and my cousins were okay. They were only banged up a little bit, which is more than I can say for the pickup. The whole nose was totaled. The only thing still intact was one headlight, which was still lit up. As we're standing around the truck, we're all looking to the right of the road, where less than 6 feet away is this 6-foot-high chain link fence that runs along the shoulder in both directions as far as the eye can see. The woods beyond the fence go all the way back into the hills. The point is that there is no way that whatever we hit took off in that direction, or even came at us from that way. Basically, it came out of nowhere, as if it loomed up from the surface of the road itself, or dropped down out of the sky. Meanwhile, Eddie was taking a closer look at the damage. It was, after all, his truck. He noticed that there was some skin, hair, and blood on what remained of the grill. along the lip of the hood, and even by the light fixture that was broken, convinced that whatever it was hurt and possibly crumpled up nearby. We looked around up and down the road and off to the shoulder to the left, but we found nothing. As it was really dark and things were kind of eerie, we decided we would come back when the sun was up and look around. We all piled back in the truck, but Eddie couldn't get it to start. He would turn the key in the ignition and not even get a sound, as if there was no battery. The funny thing though is that one headlight was still on. Go figure. No sooner had Eddie finished cursing and punching the steering wheel when we hear off in the darkness, and in the trees to the left, some whistling and laughing, as if someone is playing games with us. 1 second it seems to be coming from over here, the next second from over there, and then after that from back a ways. It went on like this for like 10 minutes. My sister tells us that it's a skinwalker, and then she starts whispering Navajo prayers. By this time only my sister is still in the truck. Eddie and I are standing by the bed on the driver's side, and my other 2 brothers and cousin are in bed. My older brother Nicky is unafraid. He thinks that it's just some idiot in the woods, and volunteers to run to the house and come back with my father's car. The house is less than a mile away. No sooner does he start jogging off, we hear the same laughing and whistling go with him, as if he is being followed. He told us later that he was aware of it, and even though he thought he heard his name being whispered, he just kept jogging along all the same. About 10 minutes later, we see these headlights coming towards us. It was Nicky. When we all got back to the house, Eddie called the sheriff to report the accident. It was super late, but he told Eddie he would meet him there and have a look just in case somebody did get hit. I went back with Eddie in my dad's car. The sheriff showed up a few minutes later. He had one of those industrial flashlights, but as much as he looked around, he couldn't find anything either. He agreed by the look of the hair left behind that whatever we hit, it wasn't a deer. When we told him about the whistling and laughing, his whole demeanor sort of changed. It was obvious that he was no longer interested in standing out there in the dark. He went back to his car and wrote out one of those little accident reports and gave it to Eddie. The next day, my mother had a friend of hers come to the Hogan. She was this really old woman that we were afraid of when we were kids. She had this small crystal, sort of pale yellow in color, that she held up and looked through, as if she could see into the past. She told my mother there was a fierce battle of wills between a local medicine man and a skinwalker last night, and that if it wasn't for the medicine man distracting the skinwalker, all 6 of us would have died when the truck went out of control and hit the trees. She never did tell us who that medicine man was or the skinwalker, though she did tell us that she knew them both. And interesting enough, when Eddie went back for the truck the next morning, it started right up without a problem. So if you're ever traveling through a Navajo res or Navajo Nation or around here at night, pray to whatever gods you have that your car does not stop and that you don't run into any dog, coyote, deer, or any animal. This encounter takes place in Chinle, Arizona, at our house. The 5 of us, a school friend, 2 cousins, my sister and I, were all in high school at the time. We were hanging out and everyone decided to spend the night because it was the middle of the summer and it was so hot. We set up our folks' van and my older brother's pickup truck so we could sleep outside where there was at least a bit of a breeze. We spent most of the earlier part of the night doing what teenagers do, including a little smoke, if you know what I mean, and also a couple of beers. Sometime after midnight, the three girls decided to call it a night and climbed into the bed of the pickup truck. My friend and I stayed out on the porch for another hour or so before heading to the van. We must have dozed off soon afterwards. According to my sister, she's a year younger than me. She is still awake, just lying there and looking up at the stars. The sky out here is really clear at night. There are stars everywhere. When out of nowhere, the neighbor's dogs from across the dry bed start to bark, which around here means that the local wildlife is out and about. My sister says she is listening between the sounds of the dogs to see if she can hear what's out there. Black against black, she suddenly sees this figure crouched on the roof of the pickup and staring down at her. She becomes absolutely frozen, partially out of fear and partially through no will of her own. She wants to scream or at least say something, but she can't find her voice. It's as if she's gasping for air, but without making any noise, and as if her lungs just won't fill. Just then, our younger cousin wakes up. She says because out of nowhere she gets this feeling of intense dread. She sits up kind of suddenly, and at the same time, it is like my sister is released from a spell. The air rushes into her lungs, and she lets out a scream, pointing to the top of the truck. But whatever it was is now gone. All three girls are now wide awake and panicking. They jump out of the back of the pickup and make for the house where my parents are sound asleep. My friend and I, totally oblivious to the excitement and somewhat under the influence, remain blissfully unconscious. Inside the house, my sister tells the other girls what she saw, or at least thinks she saw. At first they're all scared, but then they just start laughing. Then they become brave. My sister grabs a flashlight from the kitchen drawer, and the three of them venture out into the dark yard. They come off the porch and paint the front of the property with the beam of the flashlight. They see nothing of interest. Now they head towards the back of the house, all together as if the light is some kind of shield. As the beam moves across the open yard, and then to the hill of the back of the property, they see this figure moving quickly and steady, but in an awkward way, as if it has a new pair of shoes, making its way to the top. Before they can get a good look, it disappears over and down to the other side. My sister wants to go after it, but my two cousins pull her back towards the house. They go inside and wake up my parents. My mother refuses to leave the house, but my father, thinking that he's got some sort of thief running around his property, grabs his shotgun, 20 gauge, and makes for the hill. Of course, whoever or whatever it is no longer to be seen. He fires off 2 shots into the darkness anyway. Not that she needs to after those 2 shotgun blasts, but my sister then comes over to the van to wake us up to go inside the house. The only thing I'm asking is why the old man is blasting away into the night. She tells me her story. My friend, who definitely partied harder than I did, doesn't stir an inch. I told my sister I'm staying where I am, so the 3 girls decide they too are staying outside and set up watch. All 3 girls promise they won't fall asleep. Nevertheless, the 2 cousins are soon nodded out, and my sister is again alone with the stars. She says it's no more than 20 minutes, if even that many, when she hears what sounds like someone talking to themselves in Navajo. But it's old Navajo, and she doesn't know what's being said. The sound is coming from back by the hill, my sister wakes up the other two girls and they run back up to the house. My sister makes her way back to my parents' room. My dad is out like a light and not responding. My mother, however, is talking in her sleep as if she's admonishing someone. At the same time, she is invoking the name of Jesus. We are Christian after all. The next morning, my sister is asking her if she remembers any of it. My mother recalls having a dream in which something dark and menacing is outside the door trying to find its way in. She has no doubt it was evil, but she says that the prayer she did made it go away. Anyways, at the same time my mother is talking in her sleep, my sister feels a presence to the back door of the house of something she describes as evil. All three girls swear there's a heavy smell of something dead, which makes them nauseous. No sooner does my mother name Jesus, the feeling and the smell go away. When morning comes and the sun is up high and bright, the three girls and my mother go outside and have a look around. There, up on the hill, is a spot in the high grass that's all flat, as if something was sitting there. But there are no trails, tracks, or footprints of any kind. As they all come back to the house, my sister leaves the group and goes to the pickup where she left her sandals. She finds upon one of them a clump of long black hair, frizzy and tangled. All of the girls, including my mother, have dark hair, but none of them like that clump. She shows it to my mother, who tells her to immediately throw it into the fire of the stove. She tells her it is the mark of a skinwalker who intends to do bad medicine and must be destroyed. A woman living in White River, Arizona, comes home late at night from running an errand. She pulls up her driveway, gets out of the vehicle, and using her keychain, opens the garage door. Just as it's going up, she hears something run up at her back. As she turns, she sees this dark, shadowy figure slip in behind her husband's truck, which is in the driveway and to her left. The only thing that she sees is that it has patches of short, scraggly hair. And the feet that she saw don't look like they belong to anything that's human. She runs into the garage and into the house, screaming for her husband. He comes out the house and checks all around, but he finds nothing. He does tease her a bit and tells her that she shouldn't let her imagination get the better of her. However, only minutes later, a friend who the husband is expecting arrives. He's all excited and somewhat upset. He explains that as he was coming towards the house, some two-legged creature, he says it looked like a skinny bear, only really scraggly and skinny, with its mouth and teeth exposed, almost like it was drunk. It came stumbling out of the trees and straight into the side of his SUV. He slammed on his brakes, but when he got out to look, there was nothing on the road or off to the shoulder. The two then go out to have a look at the SUV, and sure enough, there's a small dent and some black hair stuck to the rear fender on the driver's side, and some hair in the bumper, but there's no blood. I recently moved to a house in Russia. I spent a few days in there, and I did not feel anything was wrong. One day, I decided to explore the snow-covered terrain, as staying in the cabin had become boring. I then noticed there were scratch marks on my door. They seemed very strong and prominent, yet I thought of it as some effect of the weather. There wasn't anything interesting, only the intriguing environment of the place itself. I soon discover a pile of bones scattered across the snow. I shook it off as a kill or a hunt of some sort. I kicked at the snow in hopes of finding a decent object that would be the highlight of my day. Along with the last pile of snow I launched, what seemed to be an old phone suddenly appeared and landed right onto the pile of snow. It seemed to be a very early phone. It was also heavily stained with red paint. I felt it would be wrong to switch on the phone, but I was too curious, and it was tough to resist the temptation. After I returned, I charged the phone, and sure enough, it opened up. It seemed to have been recently bought before it was lost or disposed of. All the applications were there, like the ones that you can't delete, but nothing else. I viewed the photo album and I saw a video, one that dated back to December 7th of 2011, but it was all black. The first 2 minutes were continuous crunching, so I assumed the person wasn't intentionally filming that. Suddenly, I heard what sounded like murmuring. I kept repeating that part and made out that the person was whispering some words, and then it was silence. I assumed the video was over. Upon leaving the video, I discovered it wasn't over. There were still at least 3 minutes remaining. It was silent for a minute before I heard a loud roar, and then there was a really loud strike. I could have sworn I heard a bone crack. It was followed by a loud crash. There was silence for a moment before I heard one of the most terrifying ends anyone could meet. I continued to listen as the roars began to fill my ears. Then, out of the blue, a series of blood-curdling screams drowned out the previous sounds. It continued on, and the screams became more desperate, getting loud. I could literally hear sounds of bones crunching. The screams were so loud at this point, and 2 audible cracks were the last thing I heard before the video went silent. I then knew that the scattered bones weren't from an animal in a kill, and that the phone wasn't disposed of, nor was the red paint on the phone actually paint. And most terrifying of all is that whatever the hell caused this, it knows I am here.